Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we're going to talk about studies, statistics, how we consume information, and what airplanes and helmets can teach us about that. Most studies and statistics have the same flaw. So we're going to talk about some historical examples that illustrate that, and then we're going to talk about some modern ones, some studies you've probably heard. During World War II, the Navy commissioned a study dealing with their aircraft. The way it worked was basically the aircraft came back, it landed, came back from action. These guys ran out and counted the holes in it. Took a diagram, drew where the holes were. They did this to a whole bunch of planes and created a composite diagram showing where most damage occurred. They used that to make a recommendation on where the Navy should put more armor on the planes. They sent this over to a guy named Wald, who was part of the statistical research group up at Columbia. He's a mathematician. He looked at it and he's like, "You're going to armor the wrong spots. You need to put it where there's no holes. It's where you need to put the armor." Why? What did he know that everybody else that looked at it didn't? He paid attention to how they gathered the information. Plane comes back and they count the holes. Doesn't include the planes that didn't make it back. He took that and realized that those areas where there was no damage, that meant if the plane got hit there, it was going down. So that's where he recommended they armor it. They went with him. Similar example was the introduction of a new helmet. I think this was during World War I. Doctors started complaining. This helmet isn't worth anything at all. Head injuries are way, way up. The reality, the helmet was really, really good. All those new head injury patients, well, before they never even would have made it to the hospital. It was saving lives. It was doing its job. Both of those have the same flaw. The person analyzing it assumed they had a complete data set, and they didn't. I'll give you one you've heard, more than likely. Demographic X commits the most crime. I'll go ahead and tell you now, there is no study, literally none, that says that. None. Somebody right now is going to the Bureau of Justice Statistics. Read it carefully. That's not what that study says. It says that demographic X is arrested the most. It doesn't say who commits the most. Somebody certainly believes you can extrapolate. Not really. Not really. Go over to the figures on the percentages of cases that are solved. You'll find out some information that may not let you sleep well at night. When you're talking about the most severe crime in the U.S., about 60% are solved, 40% are unsolved, but even that isn't a complete data set, because that only includes incidents where a case was opened. What about those people who just disappeared? You can use that statistic to determine a lot of things. It could mean a bunch of different things. It could mean that maybe it's demographic X is just really bad at committing crimes and they get caught more. Maybe they lack the economic means to facilitate the cover-up. Maybe they live in urban areas where it's harder to get rid of the evidence. Could mean a lot of things. What it doesn't mean is that they commit the most. It's not there. When you're missing half of your data set, you can't extrapolate. I'll give you another one you'll hear a lot. These climate models, I've been hearing about this since the 70s. They're always wrong. The reality is that when these models are produced, scientists don't have a complete data set. They're estimating years in the future how much pollution is going to be there. When your gas mileage increases, cuts pollution. When a state starts checking emissions, cuts pollution. When more mass transit is used, it cuts pollution. All of these things cut pollution and increase the timeline. When scientists have gone back to these models and plugged in the actual information, turns out they are incredibly accurate. Statistics and studies are useful. They can give you a clear picture of some things. If you look at enough of them, you can get the big picture. But if you only look at little bits and pieces, or you choose to interpret it however you want, don't really pay attention to the methodology used and how it's collected, well, as the old saying goes, there are 3 kinds of lies. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good night.